This audio segment was made by Rhiannon Rae. Project name and title of audio sequence is Britain's Lost Soldier Surviving in a Lost Community, the podcast. The duration of this episode is 7 minutes and 37 seconds. On today's episode of Britain's Lost Soldier Surviving in a Lost Community, we will be touching on soldiers' mental health and PTSD, as well as featuring our guest, John Glen. This MP represents one of the biggest army constituencies in the country. We'll be talking all things PTSD related, how he is helping veterans reintegrate back into civilian life, and his opinions of the collaboration between the Army and the NHS to battle on the front lines of this COVID-19 war.
It can be a massive adjustment. Their whole life and their whole working life and their social life revolves around the forces, and that can be a massive challenge and adjustment.
Mental Health Week in the UK commenced on Monday the 18th of May and ended on Sunday the 24th of May 2020. Every year we use this week to raise awareness of those who are affected by various mental health conditions, from suicidal thoughts to post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD. Although many focus around the thoughts and feelings of the general public, it has been shown that those who serve our country are suffering more than ever. Soldiers see things that should never be seen, events that the public cannot even begin to comprehend. These events stick with them and eventually take a toll on one's mental health. Official Ministry of Defence statistics revealed in Mental Health Week this year that 2 soldiers a day either attempt to commit suicide or harm themselves. This year alone, 5 soldiers are feared to have killed themselves. But military mental health groups fear that this figure is only the tip of the iceberg. In fact, the figures show that 700 military personnel could either try to commit suicide or self-harm in the next 12 months if these numbers continue at the same rate. Freedom of Information statistics show that 46 soldiers have attempted suicide or self-harmed in January 2020. The People Save Our Soldiers campaign is calling for a complete change in how the MOD tackle PTSD. But how much can be done, and how are they willing to do this? Let me introduce John Glen. John, some ex-soldiers I have spoken to have told me that the NHS have not been very helpful with their PTSD due to a lack of understanding. What are the government doing to battle this, and are you aware of this issue?
I have at times recognised that there's sometimes been a gap. I think part of the problem with PTSD sometimes is that there's a lag between the time that somebody was in a war zone and when they actually were diagnosed with it. It's not always straightforward, and often there's been a lot of intervening life experiences in between. So I think that we're always trying to develop pathways of care and diagnosis to help people who, sadly succumb to PTSD many years after sometimes their experiences in war. And, obviously it's a challenge that government has to address. As I say, the setting up of the Office of Veterans was an attempt to bring a bit more focus on the needs of a community of people who served our nation bravely in war zones and whose needs often extend much longer than people imagine.
That's very interesting, but there currently is a lot of support for soldiers currently serving. But what about veterans? Who supports them?
Well, the Office of the Veterans is about that. That is what my colleague Johnny Mercer for Plymouth Moorview is doing, which is actually putting it in the programmes of support and definition around what veterans should expect to receive, and actually to raise the profile of what they are requiring and what we should expect to give. So I think a lot's happened in the last 6 months on that subject, and I think more will happen, and it's linked to the Cabinet Office, and there's a lot of effort to try and services and availability of services to all veterans.
But when will veterans see this? Will it be soon?
So anyone who knows Johnny Mercer, my colleague, the MP, is very, very determined in these matters. He's campaigned on it since he came in MP in 2015, and I think there's a lot of enthusiasm from across the House on it, and I hope we will see progress yet.
I do so hope you're right, and it will be soon. However, what support is there for soldiers who are trying to reintegrate back into civilian life? What are you doing on a government level?
Well, I wouldn't get involved in that directly as a Member of Parliament. I mean, what would typically happen is that a family or an individual might come to me and tell me about some challenges that they're facing, be it housing or employment or training, or, there might be a breakdown of a relationship, or there might be some issues around, how they are progressing in their life, and I would get involved in those individual specific actionable matters rather than get involved with the pod sort of overall. We've helped lots and lots of people in my office, and I've written letters and met people who've had different experiences, but it's difficult to limit when that begins and ends, because obviously people have different challenges, different stages of their lives, and it's not always attributable to one particular thing. It might be that they've got a breakdown in a relationship or a mental health problem that may or may not be related to military service and may or may not be an adjustment issue. But I mean, yes, I've helped people who've experienced some of the challenges that you probably have in mind.
And finally, John, how do you feel about the ways the NHS and the Army are coming together to work on the front lines of this war against COVID-19?
Well, I think there's sort of complementary skills there, and the military bring order and planning and logistical support, and the way that they really gripped the construction of the Nightingale hospitals was classic military operation, where their organisational and logistical skills, coupled with power and force and muscle power of the personnel, allowed these things to be constructed very quickly. And obviously, those sort of challenges that you would need to overcome in a war zone or in a training environment are obviously well applied to something where you've got a defined objective to be done quickly. And so it was heartening to see how they worked together, and obviously to the prescription of the medical staff and the NHS, who knew that they needed certain things to be done quickly. So that was a very good example of different public services working together for a common goal. And I think it shows the professionalism of the military and how they can be relied on in all circumstances. We use the military in civil emergencies and floods and difficult, where we contribute to international responses to natural disasters, and obviously they played their role in this COVID response as well.
Thank you, John, for coming on the show today. I do hope we will see the veterans receiving the help that they need soon, and I'm glad that the government can recognise how vital the Army has been to the country in these difficult times.
Well, I hope that's useful. Take care, look after yourself. I wish you well in the future, okay? Thanks a lot. Okay, bye, Rhiannon.
On the next episode of Britain's Lost Soldier, Surviving in a Lost Community, we will be speaking to David Moore, who is a technicians officer in the Signals Regiment. But as a chain of command, he also has a duty to help those leaving the forces with the Army's Transition Individual Planning and Personal Development Programme, which assists military personnel who are leaving with their transition back into civilian life. We'll be talking all about how he resolves any issues a leaver may have, and he'll be providing us with some key statistics to say how well this programme works. I'd like to thank John Glen again for coming on the show, and make sure to stay tuned for the next episode.